Hello and welcome to Module 9. In this module, we discussed reporting and giving feedback to students. After this section, you're expected to be able to understand some different use of grades, consider issues in grading, and familiarize with some different reporting methods. In this first video, we'll focus on 4 aspects of grading, which are use of grades, grading principles, grading boundaries, and failure grades. Now, let's start with use of grades. As you've read, grading or marking refers primarily to the process of using a system of symbols, such as the use of numbers like 1 to 10 or 1 to 100 for reporting students' progress. Before taking a closer look at different use of grades, pause the video for 2 minutes and do the quiz on the grading on the slides. Well, the quiz you've just finished somehow reflects how you feel about assigning grades and marks. The results may actually vary among quiz takers, since grades can be used for various purposes, such as decision-making, selection, placement, guidance, course improvement, etc. In other words, grades have important meaning beyond your classroom. They do not just simply show achievement from information about a student. Through a student's grades, your and your school values can be expressed. For instance, if obedience in your classroom rules is rewarded by mark 9 or 10 in reading, but fooling around during class means the reading grade is lower. In spite of successful reading performance, you've communicated that obedience is valued more than reading well. That whether grades should be used to motivate students is also controversial. Some teachers use grades to attract students' involvement in the learning activities. For example, the students who always actively raise their hands and answer the questions in classroom correctly will be given 1 bonus score added to their 15-minute test. In another case, teachers hold some learning games in class. The group which wins the game for more than 3 times in a semester will be given 1 bonus score added to their 45-minute test. Thanks to these rules, all the students enthusiastically take part in the classroom activities because they think it may be easier and more relaxing way to gain high score in comparisons with preparation for the test. This way of using grade is supported by some researchers. However, others believe that grades should validly and accurately reflect only achievement students. That's all about some use of grades. Now let's move to grading, the components of a grade. It's important to note that you should not weight every achievement assessment equally when grading. Consider some following factors when deciding how much to weight each component. First and foremost, components that assess more of the important learning targets and content should be weighted more heavily than those focused only on one or a few targets. For example, a 45-minute test which covers some learning units should weight more than a 15-minute test covering only one part of a lesson. Second, components that focus on what you spend most of the time teaching the students should receive the most weight in determining the grade. For example, if during semester 1, 40% of the writing course is about sentence structures and 60% is about paragraphing, the task in which students have to write a paragraph in the final test should weight more than the task about sentences. Third, the components that require students to apply their learning should grade more than those that require students to simply learn by heart the theory. Also, there has some degree of unfairness by using an assessment tool to accept groups of students. You should be careful in using it for grading. For example, a timed reading test may not adequately assess students with certain disabilities. In such cases, give more weight to others more suitable approaches like writing portfolios. Components that are less reliable and less objective should be weighted less heavily than those that are more reliable and more objective. We've just finished discussing how weight grades. Now it's time to move to the next part of the section today, grade boundary. An important consideration is how to establish boundaries between the grades. What constitutes a 10 or a 7? The answer will depend on two factors: which framework you are using, and second, your school's strict policy. Ensuring that your grade boundaries have the same meaning across all assessments that will make up the grade is essential. For example, grade 7 in all assessment tasks, written tasks, or oral tasks of the subject English at your school should have the same meaning. Besides, grade boundaries failure grade is another factor that needs considering. It has been pointed out that the grade F carries a lot of emotion with it, because there are usually negative consequences to students who receive it. So what should an F mean? Failure grades depends on particular situations. For example, at some schools, if students get mark 0, it means they fail the subject. At other schools, any grades lower than 5 are failure grades. Now, no matter how you define failure grade, remember that your answer should be consistent with your grade framework. Let's get to the practical side of using failure grade. In some cases, the mark 0 is given to students who fail to turn in an assignment, as well as to those who turn in it but wrote poorly. So the 0 has two different meanings: poor academic performance and late submission. This lowers the validity. A closely related question is, should I lower a student's grade when the assignment is turned in late? Some teachers, for example, still mark late assignment, but minus some points from the mark. Again, such practice lowers the validity of the marks and resulting grades because it makes up their meaning. In some teaching contexts, 0 can be given to mischievous students. Grading practice like these are to control students' behavior instead of reflecting their achievement. Remember, do not use the same grade to describe only achievement for some students, but a mixture of achievement, attitudes, and personality evaluations for other students. I hope you've gained some more insight into grading and use of grades after watching this section. Thank you for being with us.